Hello and welcome to the 42 Rugby Show. Well, we're just about coming down from the excitement of last week in Chicago as Ireland beat the All Blacks for the first time ever. There is some important rugby this weekend, of course. Ireland hosts Canada at the Aviva Stadium and Munster face the Maori All Blacks in Thomond Park. We're delighted to be joined by Ian Dowling, former Munster and Ireland wing, to chat through the action. And we're going to look back on 2008 in Thomond Park against the All Blacks, an historic occasion. We'll talk about Ireland's team selection for Canada and what's to come further down the line. And we're also going to analyse some of their defensive errors or little complications against the All Blacks. Ian, thanks so much for coming in. How have you been since you retired? I guess people may not have seen as much of you since, but forced to retire early in 2011. How has it been since then?
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable now. Obviously it was difficult going back into the classroom early on, but life outside the bubble is good. Really enjoying it and really enjoying watching the boys playing now as well, so life's good. It's
been a pretty good time on the pitch recently anyway for Munster and Ireland. Munster on a bit of a roll. They're playing the Maori All Blacks, a pretty special fixture considering what's happened in the past. You were there in 2008, incredible day. I don't think anyone will forget that. What was that experience like? A very different game to a regular Heineken Cup as it was back then.
Yeah, I suppose we'd lost a lot of the lads. A lot of the internationals were they were away. We were kind of thrown together, I suppose. We played a friendly early on in the week and things hadn't gone according to plan, but sometimes the game plan goes out the window and you just need to put your shoulder to the wheel. And I think on that special night, that just to a man, everyone just stood up and tried to put in a performance that could do the jersey proud, and unfortunately we didn't get it done. No less, it was a special occasion.
Still cursing Joe Rockatoko for that try.
Yeah.
There's obviously a few of the guys over. I think Jason Holland and Ruud Poki are over at the moment, and it'd be a nice bit of reunion. The one thing that stands out from that day probably when people remember is that haka. Can you talk us through maybe how that came about or where that idea came from?
Before Ruud Poki, he'd after a training session in Thomond Park, he kind of sat us down and kind of talked through what it meant, and so we were obviously a bit clueless as to what to do. But
was there ever an idea that everyone would do it, or was it always just going to be those?
It was just going to be the boys, and we'd row in them behind them. Again, I suppose a special Thomond Park atmosphere that night, and it was one of those special occasions.
Because I was going to ask you about that. Like, I was down Thomond Park for that Glasgow match just a week after Anthony Foley passed away. Just an incredible occasion, really nice tribute to a legend of Munster rugby. But it seems maybe you're just transposing these ideas on it, but it felt like there was like a connection between the fans and the players that we hadn't really seen for a couple of years. It's been quietish around Thomond Park. You mentioned just before we came in that maybe Anthony Foley's death is almost a catalyst for that thing. Can you get that vibe off Munster now that something is building?
That Glasgow game perhaps was probably more difficult than definitely any match I played in anyway for Munster, and I suppose it's the ultimate tribute or a testament to the man that the boys delivered such a performance. I mean, if you look at that first score, it was a rolling line out. Tyler Blenendal, who was like Axel brought in to the setup, and for them to get that, put in that performance, and all of a sudden that self-belief started is there now, and they're going from strength to strength. And a few years ago it didn't matter who put on the jersey, there was always someone else good enough to come in and just maintain those high standards. And hopefully now tomorrow it's the same again, that even though the team is probably losing a few internationals, that the guys now who have the honour and privilege to wear that jersey going out tomorrow night against the Maoris, that they can just keep that fire burning, just keep up that level of intensity. And I've no doubt that the fans in Thomond Park atmosphere will row in right behind the boys.
Yeah, a nice sellout again. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere. On top of that, like, you're kind of talking about the emotional aspect, and there's this sense that Munster are Munster again in that way, but like the style of rugby they're employing now is really impressive as well. Like, Rassie Erasmus has come in and he seems to get it all. Like, he seems to get that emotional side that Munster need to be very much about those traditional values, and he's kind of added that directness, which again appeals to Munster players. Anthony Foley always wanted this kind of style of rugby, I think, and it's so nice to see Munster actually getting to that point and being direct as well as skillful, because I guess that's the kind of player he was, isn't it?
Yeah, for Munster it's always been started with a successful set piece. And this season, despite the early performances, the results they were getting were built on the back of solid set piece. I mean, the scrum alone maybe has won a game, possibly two. If you have a successful set piece, you're always on the front foot, and whereas I think it's nearly points on the board early doors, which makes life that bit easier. So it is a standard or a return to Munster ways. Yeah,
it's really exciting time for Munster, I think, and hopefully this game in Thomond Park is another step on the pathway back to hopefully something great. There's lots of young guys getting their chance in this game, which is also exciting to see. But it feels like something's building there, and hopefully it's going to be another epic night. We also want to chat to you obviously about Ireland. They're the talk of the town at the moment. It's been a pretty exciting week afterwards. Ireland have kind of tried to move on from the All Blacks and focus on Canada, but it still stands out. What were the most impressive aspects to the win for you?
I suppose there was talk beforehand was the consequences of a lack of second rows or true second rows for New Zealand, and I think that's where Ireland capitalised. You know, we saw. I think I was looking at some of the stats there from lineouts. So they were saying I think it was 12 of 15 New Zealand lineouts were won, but that the stats can lie in terms of it was dirty ball. So they didn't in the first half alone. I think they might have won one clean lineout, and as it went as they had planned. But
so you can't play off that. Like.
You can't play off that, and you're always on the back foot. And particularly the way Ireland's defensive system was so good, particularly starting with the line speed that they were getting off the line. They put so much pressure on New Zealand that after 2-3 phases they looked devoid of ideas, and then guys like we were seeing Robbie Henshaw holding up Kino and the turnover, so that was so positive. So the set piece, particularly line out, I think we got maybe 17 points, if not like the rolling maul, you know, which we saw a few times. Was it the first or second?
The first try, right in the left corner.
So the first try, and in the second half, another penalty over into the
far left corner.
Did another rolling maul.
Comes in field,
and they got the try off that. So what it allowed them to do was on first phase. They were getting such clean, quick, solid first phase ball. They're only putting the ball carrier plus two support runners into, or clean up guys into the ruck, into the breakdown. Getting 3-second ruck ball, which means that it's going probably to the nth degree to which Joe Schmidt is analysing or setting his team up. So for second phase, everybody's already in their positions. So the New Zealand defensive line are struggling to come to terms with that. So what we ended up seeing was just a lot of ill discipline, particularly in that first 20 minutes.
Because of the speed of the ruck.
The speed of the ruck, and they were trying to preempt the ball coming out.
The first one, Aaron Schmidt just jumps in, doesn't he?
He jumps into the side of the ruck, but Owen Franks probably jumped the gun a couple of times. It happened a few times, and where they were just caught in the traps, really, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like we always do the ruck analysis after the games. You're there for hours, obviously, totting up each ruck and who's gone into it. And invariably there's 3 men in rucks for Ireland. They love having that secure ball, but as you say, if you've only 2 men in there, then you're able to stretch that defence all the more so. I think that was really apparent. The defensive performance we're going to come back to, actually, and talk about some of the. Like, it was brilliant systematic performance, but there were a few little errors, and it maybe highlighted how good New Zealand are taking advantage of them. We did just want to talk about the Ireland team for this weekend against Canada. We don't, like, I'm sure Joe Schmidt has prepared his team to the nth degree, as you say, for Canada, but there's bigger challenges down the line. The second All Blacks match, everyone's going to want to play in that. Like, which of these guys stand out to you as possibly someone who can get in for that All Blacks match? Yeah,
there's a lot of interesting matchups going on here, because obviously the guys at the weekend, they've the jersey now, you know, it's going to be hard not pick that same 15 going forward, but you have to look at guys like Cian Healy, who's really come on immense, and he's definitely looking to make a strong statement this weekend. We're spoilt with back rows at the minute. I mean, like Peter O'Mahony and Sean O'Brien, who probably right to have been given the extra week to kind of work on their fitness and get back up to test match pace. So it'll be great to see them come on. They're, like in terms of the frontliners, we're also looking at Keith Earls. Obviously, he's going to be looking to stamp his place after the last 2 weeks. Everybody's like Ringrose is obviously the talk of town. Everybody's wanted him to have been capped maybe a season or two before, but he looks like he's after bulking up. Maybe got that extra bulk now to stand up and do a job against New Zealand, hopefully.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting matchups.
There's a lot there for Schmidt. He has been kind of loath to break up those winning combinations before, though. And as I say, those guys they've beaten the All Blacks, the ones who are resting. So they've got that in the bank. But for guys like Earls, who probably would have started that game against the All Blacks were he not suspended, it makes this Canada fixture, which on the face of it sometimes can be a bit, I don't know, less hyped than other games, but it makes it just such a massive game. Sean O'Brien was bullying, obviously, to be left at home.
Yeah.
It was the right decision in terms of their match fitness and form, probably.
Yeah.
But I think a guy like that doesn't really accept getting left out of the squad. So it is going to be fascinating to see to what extent these guys can make an impression against the Canadians. And I think probably the most important thing, like you've already mentioned, is those roles. Like the tempting thing for a guy coming back in, those guys you mentioned, is doing their own thing. Sean O'Brien going off on a big charging carry. Of course, he wants to do that, but it's about being within that system. And I guess it's so exciting because Ireland have this depth now, which we maybe didn't always have. Even in the front row, there's new guys coming in, and off the bench we don't have them there. But there's loads of exciting new caps. For the rest of this series, it'll be a shock, obviously, if they don't beat Canada. But have Ireland set themselves a standard now where they need to go and beat the All Blacks again, or is a one-off victory enough at this stage?
I think the taste of success, having done it the first time, means that that's the standard now for the group. So to a man, they're going to want to maintain that level. So I think they'd be hoping to, first and foremost, get a hold of that jersey for the All Black game, and secondly, get a win on back here in Dublin. It'd be immense if they could do that. But I don't think it's kind of you sit back and go, oh yes, we've beaten the All Blacks once, so that's it. It's great. You know, we don't want 78 to be the, and we don't want to be waiting that long for another Irish win.
The next one, they're certainly going to be better. The more I've watched the game a few times now, and the more you watch it, the more you realise, wow, the All Blacks were really off here. They're going to have Brodie Retallick back. He'll fix the line out, you'd like to think, for them. And he's also a bit of a playmaker in midfield for them. His handling skills allows them to do a bit more in terms of their wide game, which wasn't really that apparent against Ireland. So I think they're going to come back with a much improved performance. One of the guys I wanted to ask you about was Billy Holland. Pretty incredible story. This guy's 31 and he's making his Ireland debut. What stands out about him, maybe as a character and as a player?
Well, I suppose Billy is he's been there now for a number of years, but in fairness to the man, he's stood up, he's taken on responsibility, and he's a leader within the Munster setup. So it's no more than he deserves, and it's probably the thankless work that the unseen work, exactly. Yeah, that people don't really acknowledge, or while he might not receive all the plaudits, no doubt that he has the respect of his peers for the work that he does on the pitch.
Yeah, people talk about that unseen work as a bit of a joke. What are we talking about?
So in terms of, well, I suppose if we're looking at the line, it starts at set piece really. So Billy would be, I suppose, key to line out strategies, but then also in guaranteeing that he's well, like we've talked about, the ruck ball, or making sure that that's done, you know. So it's probably the work behind the scenes as well that goes on, empowering the guys that are there with him, you know. Yeah,
Joe Schmidt actually, he mentioned work rate. He said some guys bring work rate, some guys bring a quality work rate. I think that probably sums up Billy on pretty well. He's always top of the tackle count, he's always top of the ruck charts, but you go back and you look and there's aggression in every hit, there's aggression in every clear out. It's been really impressive from him, the way he's, I guess, developed over the course of his career. He's a changed player, I think. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah, developed or matured in terms of he's just stood up perhaps when when Munster anyway lost probably a lot of leaders in the forward pack, that Billy was one of those guys that kind of stood up, stepped into the breach and took responsibility, took ownership. So
yeah. Just to come back to that win against the All Blacks, it feels a bit harsh nitpicking or going back through everything in a deep analysis, but Ireland will do that themselves. You know, they want to improve on that performance. They gave up 29 points in what was a remarkable defensive performance, but we're going to maybe talk through some of the examples where New Zealand did manage to cut them down. And I think the important thing is probably to say that Ireland's defensive system, as we mentioned, was really strong, but there were these little glimpses of exactly what the All Blacks can do if you just slip for a second. We've got the setup here for the first try where Naholo broke them down and Moala ends up scoring. I think it was Kieran Reid gave it a bit of a header, which happened earlier in the season for the All Blacks as well. They seem to be a bit lucky as well. Yeah. But Ireland have kicked out. There's been a kick return. Ben Smith kind of bobbles the ball back to Aaron Smith and he finds Barrett here. Maybe talk us through what's going on with the Irish midfield, because the break actually ends up happening inside Robbie Henshaw's shoulder, but they seem to be pretty well set in that. What kind of unfolded? Well,
I suppose if we're looking here from straight away, when you're looking at this setup, you're kind of going, well, this is an advantage to the defensive system. Obviously, they've got so many guys inside. When we look at maybe the first post, there's no real backdoor options, so it's, as they'd probably been doing up to that point, is just getting line speed. What can't see from TV is whether we're just out of sync here in the midfield, but from this position, if New Zealand are looking to get from left touchline to right touchline, the ball's just going to be in the air a long time, which should allow the boys to all come up, and it's either up and in, where they all come up and in, and hammer in on the players as the ball goes, or we're maybe looking to all just drift along the line. Yeah, and so there's a few factors in play in terms of maybe the communication back here or the talk that's gone on in here, but it was perhaps just caught off guard. There just could have been possibly a miscommunication for the lack of Robbie Henshaw not hitting in. Kind of got caught flat on his feet, but
because Sexton kind of shoots up ahead of the line, he wants to get to Crotty. He does get to him, but Payne's already committed. Like it all happens very quickly. We should say that. It's easy to stand here and say, I should have done this, shouldn't I? But it does leave Henshaw in that situation. And like Naholo had started outside Henshaw, I think, but he's kind of looking in, what's going on inside me, and Naholo changes his line just the inside. And as he comes forward, it's almost too late to react. So a guy in his situation, it's almost a one-on-one in that situation. Does he just need to go and commit? I'm going to go up and hit this guy.
Yeah, I think so, but maybe the confusion is probably coming from whether if it's a drift D or whether he wants to go up and in. But as soon as they come to the line, everybody tends to, you automatically look to try and hit in.
Yeah. How hard is that to do? Because if you're standing in that situation, you're kind of worrying about these two guys, Reid and Moal, who ends up scoring the try. Is it hard to actually commit, okay, I'm just going to close it off completely, as one of those wide men?
It's quite easy here when we're playing here, but again, for the winger, he has to be confident in where his fullback is, because last thing you want to do as a winger is leave your fullback isolated to deal with a 2v1. Okay. So it's in 13. Look, it's the most difficult position on the pitch to defend, but it comes down to really this three-way, the communication between these three here, and on the inside the communication between the three boys here. But it's one of those complicated ones. But for me, the lack of backdoor option here, it would look to maybe get up and in.
Okay, and just hit it and cut it off there. It was interesting actually that Payne ended up at 12 and Henshaw at that 13 in that situation, but maybe something they'll manage a little bit better. It just shows one little glimpse and the All Blacks are going to score, and that was early in the game. You kind of feared for the worst, but Ireland's defence recovered.
Yeah, no, it was immense. I mean, like we saw the work rate, which was just indicative of the team from the get-go. The guys coming from the far side of the pitch to make those last-ditch efforts, scrambling tackles to try and prevent the try at the end. But all in all, I think they're very, very happy with how their defensive system worked all day, because at times they left the All Blacks looking devoid of ideas. Their line speeds put such pressure on the All Blacks that they didn't really have an option, or at times they just looked confused as to what they should be doing, and so they kicked a lot of ball away. And we saw the guys like Carney and Zebo just capitalised on the back of tremendous line speed and defence.
Yeah, definitely a good defensive performance from Ireland, but we just want to look at maybe the second try as well, the one TJ Perinara scored off that Dane Cole's lovely offload. As always, they were offloading freely whenever they could. They ran for 540 metres, so they did make those gains at times. Again, it's a situation that doesn't straight away look really dangerous for Ireland, but what are the things that happen? Barrett's the first receiver here. We've got Toner, Van der Fleer, Heaslip, Murray and Zebo, with Carney covering across in behind. Maybe talk us through what unfolded and how maybe a team or Ireland could do this better next time.
What the All Blacks are really good at is when, particularly the forwards, so the likes of Brodie Retallick, is once the first receiver, when they take the ball to the line, that there's always going to be the receiver of the pass taking a hard line back in against the grain. Okay. So any little dog leg here, they look to expose that gap. So we end up seeing the forwards, typically off 9, when they're on quick ball, they just give a little tip-on pass, so through the gap.
For Scott Barrett's try later on in the game.
Exactly. So in this instance, it's probably a case of there's a bit of footwork put on. Ireland it's in a decent position, so there's perhaps maybe two different types of systems that could have been put into play perhaps maybe here. So we've got Jamie, who's probably on first receiver here, and Van der Fleer on his inside is going to look.
Definitely a good defensive performance from Ireland, but we just want to look at maybe the second try as well, the one TJ Perinara scored off that Dane Cole's lovely offload. As always, they were offloading freely whenever they could. They ran for 540 metres, so they did make those gains at times. Again, it's a situation that doesn't straight away look really dangerous for Ireland, but what are the things that happen? Barrett's the first receiver here. We've got Toner, Van der Fleer, Heaslip, Murray and Zebo, with Carney covering across in behind. Maybe talk us through what unfolded and how maybe a team or Ireland could do this better next time.
What the All Blacks are really good at is when, particularly the forwards, so the likes of Brodie Retallick, is once the first receiver, when they take the ball to the line, that there's always going to be the receiver of the pass taking a hard line back in against the grain. Okay. So any little dog leg here, they look to expose that gap. So we end up seeing the forwards, typically off 9, when they're on quick ball, they just give a little tip-on pass, so through the gap.
For Scott Barrett's try later on in the game.
Exactly. So in this instance, it's probably a case of there's a bit of footwork put on. Ireland it's in a decent position, so there's perhaps maybe two different types of systems that could, off the if you want to call it, B, so marks up off first receiver.
And the opposition's first receiver.
Yeah. So the first receiver. So the guy that's stepping up out in the line, inside runner is going to be picked up by A. Typically what we see here is, so there's a few options that A needs to be conscious of. So 9 can pick and go himself. If 9 picks and goes himself, you're looking for that A runner to jam in. All guys come up and jam in. Shut it all off. Or if 9 gives that pass, the second, our B defender, comes up looking to meet or deal with that first receiver, while then this guy picks up we used to call it a hunt. So it's where he just basically makes sure that there's no inside pass given. So one thing that New Zealand are good at is exposing these sort of dog legs, because their runners are tight 45-degree angles, which it ends up being more of a hands-on tackle rather than getting you're getting your shoulder in, and as soon as it's a hands-on tackle, the ball like the opposition are on front foot.
So think of Devon Toner trying to make that tackle on Scott Barrett. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and look, when it comes to forwards, I always have sympathy for the forwards, because they're the ones that have done so much of the donkey work in terms of guaranteeing set piece ball. So typically as a back, I'd always look to kind of be a bit more sympathetic to that, particularly to that inside space. If there was a forward there, tend to stay that bit closer to him. So if there was a runner that was going to come back, that maybe we'd lose that connection between the two of us.
Okay.
So with Dev, the gap was probably, the spacing was probably a bit too big for him at that time in the game. You know, it was late on in the game, and he's after putting in a shed load of work. So
30 rucks he hit.
well, that just says it all. But probably the spacings there probably were one of the issues that cost him.
Yeah. Just to pick up on one more point there. You were talking about that A defender, or the 200, taking that inside pass. If he's taken out of the equation, does that change things for these three defenders?
Well, first and foremost, his role is to make sure that 9, he just wants to make sure if he skips, like we saw with Conor Murray's try, or maybe, well, it was even on the inside where Schmidt knocked off and then Murray just burst through. So the first thing he has to do is just is respect the scrum half, so he can't really push. And typically what we'd see is if the ball is slow, it has slowed down the ruck, we might see one of the folding around defenders then look to push that A defender to become the B, and everybody else moves out. Okay. And then that helps you just be a little bit more aggressive with your line speed, particularly in that part of the pitch.
Yeah, like there are little details in the Irish defence that maybe not allowed these tries, but like it's to an extent you almost have to accept that the All Blacks are going to score tries against you.
You know they're going to have a purple patch, and it's about how you can. You're just hoping that you can limit that the damage that they do, and like I said, the defensive system from the weekend it was immense, and while they probably might be a bit disappointed in a couple of the tries, I think I've no doubt they're going to work to kind of correct those sort of errors. But I think it was an immense performance. Immense performance.
Absolutely superb. Just in terms of what's going to happen, obviously get Canada out of the way is the most important thing, and get some of those guys a bit of form and fitness in their legs. In terms of the performance Ireland need to bring in that second match against the All Blacks, is the same going to work again, or do you think it's going to take something completely different again?
You're hoping that they can have as successful a set piece as they did. The one factor is that the returning players for the All Blacks, you're looking at guys like Brodie Retallick coming back into the fold. So what we saw from the All Blacks lineouts, they really struggled at set piece, and I think it wasn't we saw a change of tactics at the start of the second half where they started to just go to 2, try and win the ball at 2, and what that does is that nearly still plays into the defence's hands because you can get so much line speed. So I think we'll see a far better functioning line out set piece probably from the All Blacks the next day, which will probably put more pressure on the defence, but also can't expect the same ill discipline from the All Blacks as there was the last day. Granted, a lot of that was to do how well the Irish were playing and the performance they put them in, forcing those mistakes on from the All Blacks. But again, it's just building on the work that they've already done, trying to find out are there ways that they can and look to improve on the good work that they've already been doing.
Yeah, Well, it's going to be a fascinating game. Maybe Ireland have to put on 60 points this time to beat them. Thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate the insight. And thanks so much to everyone at home for watching. We'll be back early next week to reflect on hopefully a win against Canada and look forward to that massive second test against the All Blacks. Cheers.